Welcome to the Unearthed Man Podcast, the journey to becoming a conscious man. Hey all, Stephen here, and welcome to episode 63 of the Unearthed Man Podcast. I loved having the ability to have a face-to-face chat with Andrew last week. He's a beautiful man who astounds me every time we chat. He's humble and quietly spoken, with much wisdom to offer this world. Now, we recently had a friend whom we had met online as part of a course we did concerning cacao and its power as a plant medicine. And she actually came and visited us while she was back in Australia, visiting family and friends. She wanted to hold a cacao circle at our local beach with us. Before she came, we had provided a bed for a friend who needed some support, and whilst he was staying, we introduced him to cacao. Now, what took place could never have been planned. Our friend who crashed with us is an Aboriginal man who does fantastic artwork in the sand, so keep an eye out for episode 65 coming out soon. He offered to create some artwork in the sand for us to hold the cacao circle in. When we arrived at the circle and before we kicked off with the proceedings, our friend performed an acknowledgement of country using ceremonial boomerangs, song and dance. He performed an acknowledgement and not a welcome to country, as he's a Nyul man on Wadawurrung country. What resulted was a beautiful fusion of Mayan and Aboriginal cultures coming together as the four of us spent 60 minutes in a circle, acknowledging the four directions of the earth and the four elements of earth, fire, water, and air, whilst consuming this heart-opening plant medicine. We all then ventured into the water for a morning swim and energy cleanse. And it's on this note that I acknowledge the traditional custodians of this unceded land and pay my respects to elders past, present, and emerging. Now, a shout out to our sponsor, Surf Coast Wellness Rooms, based in Torquay, Victoria, Australia. As you know, as men, we spend a lot of time looking after and caring for others, and we don't spend a lot of time looking after ourselves. So now you have an opportunity to change all that. If you use the code, the Unearthed Man 10 when booking, you'll receive a 10% discount on any of their services, which include float tanks, infrared saunas, massages, and salt therapy. So it's great to use before or after a day at the beach. So how about you plan a trip down to the coast? Go and actually give yourself some self-care and spend a bit of time on the beach with your family. Now, here's a few things to run through before we kick into with today's guest. First, the Unearthed Men community, of which my guest today, I'd love to have a member on board of. We're basically, it's a group of men who are just willing to support and be supported by other men and continues to grow. If you're a man or know a man who is seeking his tribe or his community, then please use the link in the show notes below to sign up. Alternatively, you can message me via any of my social media channels. Secondly, please subscribe to the podcast. Now, this is a pretty critical item. The more people that actually subscribe and hit the 5-star review button means the podcast goes up in the tracking list, which means it becomes more available to more and more men to be able to jump on and easily find the podcast. By you also clicking the review, you acknowledge the time and effort that my guests put in and for them sharing their wisdom. So I'd ask you to please do that. And finally, if you're a man who's struggling in the daily grind, have constant feelings of guilt, shame, or anxiety, feeling irritated or frustrated, and have lost track of who you are, the deep inner sense that there's more to life than this, and expressions of interest for my 8-week men's empowerment program are now open. As I've said on a couple of episodes, I only take 10 men each year. Each time I run a program, I'm only taking in 10 men this year. So if you're keen to get on board and you want to be part of that 10 who is willing to take your life to the next level and become fully empowered, then certainly use the link below to click on and we'll jump on and have a chat. All right, now on to today's episode. My guest today is all about connection to the higher self and remembering who and what we truly are and what we are all here in this timeline to do. Predominantly a sound healer, breathwork facilitator, and holistic space holder for various events, although sound is where the heart lies. Sound exploration is an amazing tool to activate ourselves in this remembering and guide us on the path back home to ourselves through connection to a higher self. Through an array of sound tools and instruments, he loops and creates sounds to replicate environmental elemental sounds and uses raw instruments such as handpan, didgeridoo, Native American flutes, crystal harp bowls, and more to ground us back deeper into ourselves, where many of the answers we seek can be found. I'm actually really excited to have this man on board. I've met him many years ago, and he's such a beautifully heart-led man as well. So welcome to the Unearthed Man Podcast, Jamie Patara. Hey, Jamie.
Hey, buddy. How are you, mate? Thanks for having me.
No worries at all, mate. I'm excited to have you on board. This has probably been a year or so in the making to get you into the podcast. So it's exciting to actually be able to have this chat with you.
Beautiful, mate. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here and share a little bit about what's going on in my world with you.
Yeah, exactly. Now, from memory, you actually did bridge with my wife, Jackie. Did you bridge and extreme or just bridge with Jackie?
Yeah, bridge and extreme. Yep, that's right. In 2019. Yep.
Yeah, I think that was certainly that was a big year for us. I know after that I went and did Unleash the Beast after that, and I know there was a big year for Jackie and probably kicked us onto this journey where we are now.
Yeah, it's a bit of a small world, I guess, in a lot of ways. There's lots of synchronicities in terms of how the community that me and you are both involved in today played out actually from that point in time. In Bridge and Extreme, like I met your wife Jackie there, and like you said, you went on to do Unleash the Beast, which I'm not sure if you remember, but my brother actually was there at that as well. So that was kind of a real catalytic moment for a lot of people, including myself, into how I got where I am now. And a lot of the beautiful community that we both know are doing wonderful things in the world today because of being in that container at that point in time.
Yeah, no, exactly right. And your brother-in-law did Bridge and Extreme as well, Michael.
Yeah, he did too. Yeah, and my sister Leah.
That's right, Lee did as well. Yeah, so it's you're right. After because it's interesting because I think that was based up in Brisbane, and so all of a sudden we've all come back to Melbourne, and then we're like, oh, hang on, Jamie and everyone else is based down here in Melbourne. Cool, we've got these connections and this new way of actually connecting into this other community, which has been awesome.
Yeah, it was amazing. It was definitely a very important part of my life, that's for sure.
Cool. So let's have a bit of a chat about, as you said, about your life. Like, what does that look like? Because as we've alluded to, your brother's now sort of lent into this area of, almost more spirituality, learning, getting a bit more conscious yourself, your sisters, brother-in-law. So obviously you're on a journey now, but let's take some steps back. What was life looking like for you? Like when you grew up, whereabouts you grew up and everything else?
Yeah, I guess this is a question I get asked actually quite often by a lot of people. And it's simply like that question around how did my journey start and how did I arrive to where I am here now? Particularly because the last few years have really accelerated really quickly. So people are kind of interested in how that began. Just to give a brief summary overview, like I began life in Melbourne, was born and raised in Melbourne, grew up on the Mornington Peninsula, grew up on a farm with my family, and it was a very quiet, beautiful life. And yeah, I guess to summarize, when people ask me how did I begin on this journey, as a child and a small boy, I was always very, I guess, different in a few ways. I was very quiet, very introverted in a lot of ways, very gentle and soft. And I always would ask questions that no one else my age would ask. So I would always be asking my mother, the big, deep questions around like, why are we here? What is the point of, meaning of life? Like everything, all the deep questions. And I would often, look up at the stars and wonder my place in the world and why we're here. And I was always very connected, very spiritual, even if I didn't understand exactly what that meant back then. Mm-hmm. But I knew that there was something bigger in life, that I was meant for something bigger, and that what we're all here to do is far greater than one individual person. So I always had this innate feeling within me around, what it is that we're here to do. And that was a beautiful thing to have as a child. And then I guess as I kind of gotten towards my later teen years, that started to drift off and fade away a bit, for a variety of reasons, just life in general. I got caught up in friends, and I got caught up in drug addiction. I got caught up in relationships. I got caught up in just the hustle and bustle of life, where that took over at the forefront. And for the best part of a decade, really, all that beautiful, gentle, soft spirituality side of myself that was really at the forefront for many years as a younger child really just wasn't there. It was always laying underneath dormant, but it kind of went away. And it wasn't until I kind of approached 30 again. I'm now nearly 35. So as I come up for 30, that it started just to come back organically. And there was, a bit of a catalyst moment in my life where a relationship ended for me. And it was at that point where something just clicked in me that I knew things had to change in my life, because things were on a bit of a path that I wasn't really happy with, and it was kind of spiraling out a bit. It just so happened that at this time where something was shifting and changing in me, that I was landed in those workshops, Bridge and Extreme, with Preston Smiles and Lexi Panos. And that's where I met Jackie. And at that point in time, I would have thought I had no place being in a place like that, in a container like that. But I went into that weekend, those 2 weekends, with a lot of fear and a bit of, not really sure what to expect. But long story short, when I came out of it, it was the complete life-changing moment for me. Those 2 workshops for me were the catalyst for where I am today. It helped put me on a path to everything greater in my life today. So from coming out of those workshops, I ended up finding my way into men's medicine and Amend, which are the two men's groups that sort of came out of the Gold Coast from Lino and Moi. And that's how me and you met, obviously, in men's medicine stuff at the start, in Melbourne, doing those kind of men's workshops and things like that, and shifting and moving. And yeah, I got really into doing that kind of work for a period of time, and that served its purpose where it needed to be. And I sort of started to see the depth and, how powerful it is to pull back the layers within ourselves, and then showing me the light of how I can then do that and serve others in the same way. And, it was such a powerful place for me to be in at that time. And I was still not really sure what was happening for me. But at the same time, and this is the big point I come back to when I explain this to people, was everything that has happened to me in the last few years and everything that I'm doing now and will continue to do, this isn't something that I'm learning or, it's not a new thing. It's uncovering and rediscovering what's always been there for me, which is why I make note of how I was as a child. All of those beautiful elements myself have come back in full force, and then some in the last few years. And a part of why I do what I do now is because this is what I strive towards, is to get people to understand that you're not learning something new when you come to my events or you come to work with me. I'm not teaching you something new. We're just creating an environment where you get to rediscover what you've always known. So yeah, after working in the men's spaces for a year or so, which was really powerful, it just organically moved into the next phase, which was I found some beautiful community and some beautiful people, and I started to get into more ceremonial work. So I know you're a huge lover of cacao. Cacao found its way into my life and played a huge part for a while. For a couple of years, I actually was running a cacao business as well, which was powerful. And then started running like plant medicine ceremonies, cacao ceremonies, and then sound found its way into my life during all this at the same time. Just as we kind of came out of lockdown, or during lockdown, it really became clear for me that sound was such a huge love of mine, and it always has been. I think I was probably 14 when I got my first guitar and started playing in bands straight away. So all my late teen years, I played in bands, played bass guitar, and that's always been in my life. Musicality has always been in my life in some way. Then I got into like some, very minor kind of DJing stuff. I love dance music as well. All that kind of scene was very big for me, but it wasn't until, a few years ago that sound found its way into my life in a healing modality like it is now. And, I'm just so grateful, because not only has it been a massive driver for me to uncover and rediscover more parts of myself, it's been, such a huge conduit for me to be self-expressive in how I let my emotions, come through for me. And then I get to then be of service to people by, showing them parts of themselves through the power of sound. And yeah, so that's kind of a brief overview. Like I said to you before, I could talk forever about this, and we could, spend many episodes going on about this, but that's sort of a brief overview of where it came from for me. So again, the big takeaway here for me is this isn't something that feels new for me. It felt very familiar right from the moment a few years ago when I started to really deep dive into it. And it's just continually peeling back those layers for me every day. And the more I dive into it, the more I keep finding out about myself. And yeah, like I said, the things have gotten really large, loud, and fast the last few years. And it can be very full on and busy, but I wouldn't have it any other way.
Yeah, thanks, man. Thanks for sharing that. As you said, the brief overview about where you came to, and there are some items that I want to double back on. That just want to maybe do a bit deeper dive. But you're right, where we are now, and I'm in a similar space now, particularly with the men I'm working with. My job is not about teaching them something new. My job is actually helping them to unlearn the things that they've actually learned, that's put those barriers over their heart and the barriers over who the true person they could be, that's built up over many, many, many years. So for me, I just see as that we've got these, as children, we have these beautiful hearts, and we've got this beautiful destiny that's set in front of us. And then every time, whether it be a family or a schooling or a bullying or a little trauma at school or something else, we just put these little bricks. They slowly start to build up, and all we're doing is putting more and more bricks in front of our heart, and we just build this wall, because then we end up wanting to live in this world of safety, in our world of wanting to be, we think pleasure and happiness becomes external to us. So we keep putting these little things out there to how do we adapt ourselves to be seen and loved and validated in the society as a way we're meant to be. And so for me, I see what you're doing through all the sound healing, and we'll definitely talk about my experience at one of your workshops. But it's about how can we actually now start to break down that wall? How do we start to just slowly unpiece all those bricks and just let that heart that's always there, that's been there since day one, the destiny that's been there since day one for us, we just got to go back and rediscover it, as you said. So it's such an awesome experience to go through. And I think that's what I have a combination of when I learn, it's not about what am I learning something new? It's like, what's this new tool that I've got that actually is a new tool I can use to actually help further break down the brick walls that I've built around my heart. And that's all that is. That's all I'm doing. It's like, oh, cool. Here's a new tool. It's like, here's how you use the hammer today. Here's how you use the chisel today. Here's how you use the screwdriver today. Like, it's new tools to help all that happen. And then, yeah, it's a great space to be in. And the other thing is, it's now an ongoing journey. It's this beautiful journey now of witnessing and discovering, and then going, oh, gee, there's a new trait that's popped up that I hadn't seen before that I now need to work through. And I'm just going to, be a witness to it, not judge it, understand it. And how do I unpack that one? Because that's something that's, it was a layer. Now I've got the outside brick wall done. I'm now moving to the inside layer and the inside layer, and you just keep going a bit deeper and deeper.
Yeah. I think I really like everything you just said there. There's so many valid points in there that I can really resonate with. And like you said, it's these bricks that we've built up over time. And if I go back to the men's space that me and you've both worked in, you're still working in a lot with, in terms of these narratives and programs and outdated paradigms that a lot of men still live in around, we have had these walls built, and now we're just trying to get people to unlearn these shitty narratives and paradigms that don't suit the current timeline that we live in. And this ideology around looking for things externally, it's so true. And I can speak from my personal experience around that's how I lived my life for a very long time, where I thought my happiness was external. I thought it was in other people. And in many ways, a lot of this is still stuff that I am working on. You know what I mean? Like, we're all human beings, and we never just get to a point where we go, oh, that's not how it works, and then we just stop doing it. We always drop back into that from time to time. But I always labored under the pretense for many years that when I get to this point, I can feel this. And when I feel this, that will equal my happiness. And I always thought, I'm destined for great things. And I thought that it was just going to land in my lap. I thought greatness would be just thrust upon me, and I wouldn't have to do anything for it, because I believed in it, and that it would just happen. And always thinking that the answers were just around the corner. They were just always nearly there, and that they're nearly coming, and they're nearly going to be here, and I'm going to be where I want to be. And as we both know, it doesn't work like that. You do need to put the effort in and actually go out and seek it, and manifest that for yourself. It just doesn't appear. So that is a great part of teaching, not just men, but everyone, to remember that it's not external. It's not always external from us. And there is a great balance of doing, what's within us, and then what environments we can put ourselves in, what people we can surround ourselves in as well. 100%. I think it's really important that we remember that. I definitely can resonate with that.
Yeah, no, excellent. And I agree. It's interesting. I put up a post yesterday, that he sort of spoke about, when you walk into a room, do you actually add energy to the room, or do you take energy from the room? And it was like an interesting sort of statement, but I didn't see it as black and white of that, because, if I walk into a room that's full of positive energy, so if I've surrounded myself with a whole lot of beautiful people, and there's a whole lot of just nice, positive, loving energy, I'm probably going to take away from that room. Sure, I've walked in the room and I've brought something to the table, but I'm also going to extract more of that positivity out of it to actually say, here's something else, and I can continue to move away. Whereas if I do walk in a room and it's full of negative energy, I'm either going to try to add the positive energy in the room, or I'm actually going to probably say neutral, because I'm going to shield my positive energy. I'm going to try to spread the love and be open and loving. But you've also got this really interesting boundary about how we work and then who we interact with. And, I still like that thing that, you're a summation of the 4 or 5 people that you hang around with, and so the question to the men is like, who are you hanging around with? Are you hanging around with men who are validating who you are in the victimhood and in the whinging and the moaning and the groaning about how tough life is? Or you're actually starting to surround yourself with men who are going to almost hold you to account to go, is that really true? Is that really a big truth in your life? Like, is your life really that hard for you? And is that really serving you today? And it's not, you're just holding him. You're just putting a mirror to it and going, really, like, you could be better than this. Like, you can actually find something else about this. And that's the challenge, because a lot of people define their happiness and their love and in their life by, who they hang out with, the drugs they have, the alcohol they have, the food they have, how they carry on at football games or whatever else. There's like that's more of a, they're trying to find this whole external piece because they're playing the role that they think they need to play with that group of friends or that group of people.
Yeah, 100%. I actually said this to someone not long ago that for many years I was very much a chameleon, that I would, adapt how I needed to behave and act around particular people. I had a full handful of tools of different personas that I would be around other people. And, I guess you could take that back to a bit of people pleasing because I wanted to make sure that I was fitting in for the groove and the niche of who I was with so that I would be liked and loved. But in terms of, I love that saying about, the 4 or 5 people you surround yourself with, who you're going to become. And it's all about upgrades, end of the day, from my experience. Like, who you surround yourself with, if you surround yourself with people that are going to help you grow and show you new ways of being that are going to be beneficial for your growth, it's just instant upgrades all the way. And a lot of the time, we just need to remember to kind of zoom out and just get out of our own way a bit. Like, this whole journey that we're talking about, it's not linear at all. And the moment we kind of adapt that, you can't see the forest through the trees kind of approach, to just zoom out and see it for what it is. And let the ego go and just know that you need to be given permission. For me, it's all about, I was given permission to feel and not be felt like I was shamed for feeling what I'm feeling, and to soften into the big heart that I have. That's a big part of this as well. You go into these rooms, if you go into these rooms, these containers, these spaces, these events with people who make you feel safe and give that energy off that, hey, this is fine. And when you can drop in and be you, that this ripples out to everyone else, because not only do you upgrade, you then go out into the world and offer that permission out to other people, and then the same thing happens. It's a ripple effect, and it's the most incredible thing. And I remember that happening so well with those men's groups that we were a part of. Just that safety and permission that was given, it's a game changer. So that's a huge part around lots of the ways that I like to work, especially in events. It's about me and how I can create safety for people. Because if people don't feel safe and you don't feel like they can give them a permissive space, they're never going to go to where they need to go and get what they need out of it.
Yeah, I fully agree. The one thing that I will always remember, particularly, after 2019, I think that's that pivotal time in all our lives. But yeah, definitely getting down and just catching up with a group of men, whether it was under the banner of men's medicine or under the banner of Amend, and just walking up to men and actually just warmly embraced. And there was no judgment in it. And for, having spent 40 odd years of my life with a closed off heart and going through that process of feeling safe step by step of opening your heart up, because, that's the challenge for men when we've blocked it off. If you step into that one space that is unsafe, all of a sudden everything's going to close over again. Like, all that memory is going to come rushing back in of, I can't trust men, I can't trust this, I can't do that because it's going to hurt again. But stepping into those spaces where you walk up and there's just a whole lot of beautiful men who are just like ready to give a hug, ready to hold space, ready to have open conversations. And then you can talk to what you want to talk to. And then everyone just goes, yeah, we got you, brother. And arm in arm, just holding people and allowing people just to be in tears, or, allowing it to the emotional flow with no judgment, but nothing more than, yeah, we hear you and we feel you. And it's such an awesome space. And I can't recommend enough for guys to try to find where is that space. Don't go, there's I could head down the pub and have a few beers and feel consoled, but really all that guy's doing with you is he's trying to block himself up and go, that's all right, mate, we're going to have a couple of beers. You'll get through this, versus, no, let's actually, are you okay? Are you seriously, what can we do to actually get into that deeper emotion? How do I allow you to express all that and go, yeah, I've got you and I'm holding you and I've got this space being held for you?
It's funny, yeah, because you talk about that kind of scenario where a friend might see that someone needs support and they're like, let's go to the pub and have a few beers. The intention's there for wanting to help them and noticing that they need help, but the toolkit's not there for how to do it. So, obviously, me and better than if we need to, emotionally release or have a chat. Going to the pub's not the right way to do it. You know what I mean? And going back to, saying before, these spaces, for me, it was a big thing normalizing to just tell men, I love you. That was a huge thing for me. And just like you said, to be able to walk into a room, give men a hug, and whether it's in person or a message on the phone call, just finishing up with I love you and being able to do that. Like, that's big. And I know a lot of men who feel the same way. And I think a big problem that I have seen over the years is that when I see men who want to lean into being emotional, letting their emotions come through and to work into that growth space, they want to do it, but they've got no community around them to support that or give that permission to them. So even if they do manage to find their way to an event, which can be a bit of a struggle, when they leave, they've got no ongoing support to keep, reiterating that into them and to keep solidifying that what they've learned. So community is really important. That's like one of the biggest messages I'll give out to men is you need to find community, you need to keep that ongoing support going. Absolutely. But yeah, I think it's definitely something that's grown. It's definitely grown over the years. I mean, you've seen the huge effect over the last 3 years of what's happened. It has a long way to go, but we are moving. It is getting forward, and it's just about consistently showing up.
Yeah, I definitely agree, and I think that's the key about. I see a big role that we play is we've got to lead first, and so yes, it may not be easy for us, or it might feel uncomfortable even for us to tell males and women, purely platonically, hey, much love you guys, and just have that piece out there. But by us leaning into it and actually, one, we're healing every time we do it, but two, it's actually giving other people that permission. I operate in the corporate space, and it's something I'm learning to a bit as well, of even, signing off on certain meetings saying, hey, I love yous all, and just but being genuine about it, and people going, hang on, what's that? Or walking into a workplace and actually just giving people genuine hugs, and there's a group of people I've worked with that I actually caught up with them recently. And, the one thing they wanted from me when I walked in the door was they couldn't wait for a Milvo hug. Like, that was one of those sorts of things. And I'm like, cool, because this is something I brought into a workplace, and they've now seen the value of that true, connection through just love and a hug. And so the more that we can be willing to step into that discomfort ourselves in different environments is actually where for me, that some of the true leadership is going to start to come from. And that's where even those bigger ripples start to flow out, because if we're doing that with others, then they feel more comfortable, then they're going to go and hug someone else. And we get this actual the physical connection as much as the energetic and emotional connection.
Yeah, 100%. Definitely agree. Physical connection is like a massive part of this, and we need to make sure that we do normalize this and humanize this. You know what I mean? Like, the words of affirmation are beautiful, but let's back it up with, the other side of it, physical touch, to really, get it home. Yeah.
Exactly. So now I'm going to actually take a bit of a step back, because this has been an awesome conversation, because, a bit about where we are now. But you when you went through your review and, your brief overview about where you're at, you did touch on the fact that, getting into the late teens and probably, early 20s, that, you started to step into the space of drugs. So there must have been a bit of a journey for you of, can we talk into what that looks like for you, perhaps what were some of the drivers you've now learned about why you stepped into that space, and, what that looked like you to, then move away from that area?
Yeah, absolutely. And this is a perfect example around who you surround yourself with is who you become. I mean, when I was in my later teens, I was very much into partying, going out a lot and taking, party drugs, having a great time, which, was some great years of my life. And it just ended up moving into a more dangerous sort of space where it wasn't about having fun, and it was about numbing out. In the end of the day, it was a progression over a couple of years where it just got a bit thicker and deeper. And like anything, the deeper you get into something, the harder it is to get out of it. So for me, in those early 20s, I fell into that hole a bit too deep for my liking. And that had most of it had to do with the people I was surrounding myself with. They were also, using. I was surrounded by it. I felt like I had to do it. And more importantly, I was much younger than the men that I was surrounding myself with. So I looked up to them. I never really had a lot of strong male figures in my life growing up. Like, I love my dad to pieces, but he was never available growing up, and he was busy working or whatever. So he was never really around. I was never shown by him what a strong man what a conscious man is. My brother, who was 10 years older than me, he also was, dealing with his own issues and problems of life. So he was never really around too much in that sense to me too when I was in those younger years. So the men that I was surrounding myself with at this point in time were showing me, like, this is all I knew. That was my whole realm. To me, that's what you did. So that's why I kind of got stuck into it. And the deeper it got, the more I realized, that innate knowing within me that was smothered and buried, it was trying to pop through and scream and tell me that, this isn't you, and, you're better than this, and you need to get out of this. And at the time, the mother of my children, who I was married to then, this is all a big secret. So, you layer secrecy on top of being in a drug addiction. And for those who've been there will understand this very well. It becomes a real time bomb, ticking time bomb.
Mm-hmm.
And amongst all that, you get layered in with, self-worth issues, limiting beliefs, which I didn't even know were happening back then. I just knew the feeling, but I didn't have enough awareness back then to actually understand that that was what was coming through for me. And I'm pretty lucky as a person, Steve, that like every big thing that's happened to me in my life, I've managed to move through it organically. Things have happened for me where it gets to a point where it's enough and something happens to me and I organically shift into a space of, okay, it needs to move. So I'm very grateful and blessed that I have that within me to be able to say, okay, I can recognize when it's time to move on. And it just got to a point with that drug use where I was like, this is so detrimental to me, to my health and to my family around me. And I just, in the end of the day, I stepped away from the people that were allowing that to happen for me and continuing to keep me in that space, which was the biggest part, surround myself with better people. So I managed to get out of the deeper depths of the hole, so to speak. And it was like I went in, it got deep, and then I came back out of it, so to speak. And, I still used drugs in a different way after I got out of the depths of it. But then it kind of still was always there that I was using them to numb out. So I found in the relationships I was in at the time, I may have been really unhappy. So that was my escape. Or even if I look back now, I'm still peeling apart layers of the last, 15 years of my life today around, that's why that was happening. And that's why I was doing that, because I knew now that I was numbing out, but what exactly was it I was numbing out from? And this is stuff that I get to go back even now and pull apart. So yeah, there was a lot of it, and same with alcohol. Like, I was a big drinker for a long time as well, like as in using it for all the wrong reasons. And now having that recognition and awareness around, okay, that's why I used it for why I did. So it is a different perspective to have now, different lenses on it. And yeah, I'm grateful to come out the other side of it, where I know it's really difficult for other people to not have that journey that was so organic that it was for me.
So when you sort of talk about you organically came out of it, because I know I did something similar with alcohol, although, I had an event. So I always knew it was not right. I always knew I was, hiding. So like if Jackie would go out on a Friday night, and I'd say, yep, I'm looking after the kids. Like I would go and buy, she'd know that I would love a red wine. So I'd go and buy a bottle of red wine. But what she didn't know was that I'd already hidden the second bottle of red wine in the carport. And so she only ever saw the one bottle of red wine coming in. Then by the time she got home, there's still half a bottle of red wine left. And she's going, oh, you only had half a bottle of red wine, but I've actually had a bottle and a half because the one I hid got put back into the recycle bin. These sorts of things that you just carry. And you do get to that point where you're going, this just isn't there. So for me, and I've spoken a few about this on previous podcasts about, I just had that one day where I just got smashed and then embarrassed Jackie in front of friends and everything else. And I just knew that this had to stop. So was there an actual moment? Like, was there something that just when you said organically, but was there a trigger that's gone, oh my God, I just did this took place. I know it's not right. Organically, I've got to move out of this.
Yeah. There was that moment for me. And like I said, this was the moment that came for me just before Bridging Extreme. So, I mean, what happened was, it was 2017 that my marriage ended, and I came out of that and went straight into another relationship. I mean, like straight into another relationship. So I was with my ex-wife for all up. We were together for like 12 years, so a long time. And when I moved into this other relationship, that ran its course for a couple of years. And towards the second half of that relationship, I just wasn't being my authentic self. Like I was that person who, I'd be at home just doing, lines of drugs at home by myself because I was so unhappy. There'd be maybe even some deceit there around, lying around where I was, who I was hanging out with at the time. And just, lots of drinking. And yeah, long story short, it got to the point where the relationship ended, and she walked out of the relationship. And I remember at the time, the house I was living in, and I was there all by myself. She'd moved out, taken all her stuff, and it hit me like a brick wall. And it wasn't just that she'd left and the relationship was over. It took me a while to understand this. I then started grieving the end of my marriage at the same time. So I grieved the end of two relationships in one go. So I'd never created any space at all for me to grieve the end of my marriage and the mother of my children. And then on top of that, another relationship had ended. And I knew it was because that in that second relationship that I just turned into a really average person who I didn't like. So for me, it just hit me after that I needed to make changes, because at that point in time, I was like, well, this is looking like there's a common denominator here, and it's me. I can try and point the finger all I want, but at the end of the day, it's all there. You know what I mean? It's all there. It was all there in front of me. I'm like, look at the way you behaved the last couple of years. Not okay. Look at the way you behaved the last, 5 years in your marriage. Not okay. And I just knew that if I didn't change something, it wasn't going to end well for me. I was never going to find happiness. I was never going to find love. I was never going to find myself. So for me, it was that point in time where that relationship ended. And for me, that triggered for me to finally start to feel into the end of my marriage. And that enormous floodgate opening of emotion set me on the path towards change. And now that change for me ended up being directed into going to those workshops in Brisbane. And that container held me through releasing a lot of that trauma and grief. So for me, it was organic, but at the same time, there was that trigger point. Yeah, for me, it was having someone walk out of my life and me having that happen. Yeah.
Yeah, and thanks for sharing that. That's really powerful, because I think the thing for all men or any men listening out there, I think deeply, we always deep down know this isn't right, that there's something just not right about this, and for me, I'd never got into drugs, but it was always alcohol, or pornography. So when I stopped the alcohol, the pornography stayed in there. So it was just a swap out one for the other, because there's just like, hey, how do I get this quick bit of happiness? How do I get this quick hit? How do I actually, move beyond, the mundane? How do I move beyond the mediocre, the average? What do I need to do to sort of feel something that there's better out there for me? But ultimately, that's just always chasing that thing that's external to us. It's just always trying to find, it's like, how do I keep externally trying to make myself happy? But then within a day after you've done that, like, the happiness still isn't there. The hollow feeling, the deepness and the darkness still sits inside. And, you can be better than that. And I think that's the part of when we talk about carrying shame and guilt, it's like, I think part of it is actually, we just know that we can be better than this. And we're ashamed of ourselves, that we're not living the truest life that we could possibly live, and that we're very, to a degree, self-centered, and we haven't actually learned how to be sort of serving of others. And so we get a bit caught in ourselves and our misery and, how tough our life is, without really understanding that, the more we can actually move away from being self-centered. And it's not about, we just become a people pleaser, but it's about how do we actually, put out this ripple effect? How do we actually put out more love to other people? How do we actually, do that? Because what we put out, we actually get back. And for me, like, be it on drugs, be it on alcohol, be it on porn, what we're actually putting out is negative energy, and what's actually coming back is more of the negative energy. And so, it becomes this circular thing. It becomes self-fulfilling until we can get to the point where we go, hey, actually, if I went to the other extreme and, if I put out love, and the more I actually leant into that pain of, removing the barriers to love, and more the put out love, the more love actually comes back to me. And then you find actually there's a lot of happiness in just being able to love people and love just nature and love all the things that are around us.
Yeah. And like you said, you nailed it, like self-fulfilling prophecies, like they're just happening all around us all the time. We don't even realize it until we bring that awareness to it. And also until we create a moment in time where we make a change or we do something differently for the first time, and then we get that rewarding feeling around, oh, that's actually far greater than anything I've ever felt before. It can be really hard to make any changes and to make that attempt because you don't know what's on the other side.
Mm.
So it's really important that what you do, what I do, what all these beautiful space holders in our communities are doing is creating that at least that first moment that engages that curiosity and that thing within people that they go, oh, there is far more out here than what I've known. Because you don't know what you don't know. So the whole game is how can we get people to at least peel back a little bit of what's happening here and see that there's an endless treasure trove waiting for you.
Oh, absolutely great. And I think Preston's described this at some point. Preston and Alexi that did Bridge Extreme, and in fact, they've just rerun it here in Melbourne, up in Brisbane recently. So, but yeah, I think that they pretty much say over this weekend, all we're going to do is put a little crack in that armor. We're just going to open up so you can actually see enough inside to your own heart and go, oh my goodness, there is something there. And it's that stand about people then have a choice. They can come out of those workshops and go, yeah, didn't quite get there, and choose not to keep leaning into this new available world. Or they can go, hang on a minute. Now it's time to really, now I've got the crack in the armor. It's like, okay, I'm going to really peel this apart. So is there a way that you could, I know how I can describe what happened to me over the weekend that I had with Preston and the 50 odd guys. Is there any way that you could describe what walking out of is? I know you did Bridge and then you said, I don't know whether you had already pre-signed into Extreme, but you're like, hey, this opened up the crack. I'm ready to go and do an Extreme and really open this up. But how you felt before walking into those 2 weekends and how you felt after those 2 weekends?
Yeah, it is one of those things for me, like experiencing and explaining are two different things, as always are. But I mean, walking into the first weekend Bridge, it was very daunting for me, very scary. I'd never really done a personal development workshop like that before, and I didn't know what to expect either. So I mean, I did feel a lot better about it, but I was doing it with some of my family members, which created that safety bubble for me. But it was just so different for me when I went in there. Some of the things that were done in those workshops to me today just seem like basic normal modalities and ways of being, but back then they were so foreign to me. Like even in an eye gaze, like in the first bridge workshop, doing an eye gaze with someone for the first time and bawling my eyes out, like that was so powerful for me. So all these kind of small practices that came in there really just showing me how it was just really safe to go there with this particular group of people and to let my heart be open. And even though I didn't fully know what was happening, to just let it be, that was beautiful. So Bridge was very powerful in that it cracked that armor that you talk about. It did crack me open greatly. And I hadn't booked in for Extreme after Bridge. I just did the Bridge. And I ended up staying in Brisbane up that way to go stay with my brother for a few days after it. And I instantly knew as soon as I left Bridge that I was going to have to go back and do Extreme. So I made that decision the next day. I called work and just said, I'm not coming back to work this week. I'm staying up here. And I booked the ticket and I went back. I went back to do Extreme that weekend. And that was just the next level for me. Like I told, I had a friend who just did Bridge and Extreme weekend just been, and I messaged them after they did Bridge. I said, how did you find it? And they said, yeah, it was really amazing. I said, are you doing Extreme? And they said, yes. I said, that's where all the magic was for me. It just, I won't give it away because obviously the potency and magic of what those containers are, but some of the processes you go through there will reveal parts of yourself that you just had no idea about before. For me, it was around self-love. For me, it was around how I was giving to everyone but myself, which seemed really weird for me because I was so selfish for so long. So it was quite unusual that I kind of had these two polarities I was bouncing. But at the end of the day, essentially, that's what it came from. And when I walked out of it, I felt massively changed. I felt like I was on a high. I felt like I was ready to tackle the world. I felt empowered and ready to start this journey and to ultimately bring back those parts of myself that those 2 weekends shifted away some of the dirt and dug back up that old Jamie, that that inner child. So that's how I really felt walking out of those weekends. And yeah, not long after that, like me and you connected, I think, at one of the men's medicine things. Like men's medicine was brought to my forefront because of Bridging Extreme. The men that were in those workshops were then running the next phase of where I was going to be operating out of next. So just chalk and cheese walking in and out of them, honestly.
Yeah, and I will agree. It's interesting. So I didn't do Bridge and Extreme, but I remember going to the closing ceremony of Bridge because that was part of the whole thing where you got to turn up and witness your partner who's gone through it, and it's like 100 odd people I think did Bridge, and just watching those people stand up and go, I came from here to here, and just seeing the emotion pour out. And what I witnessed, interestingly, was the high percentage of men who were just like, you could just see their life changed, and some men like, like Jay Godfrey, and I think, yourself was there. And I was just watching these guys wearing these men's medicine t-shirts, and like just the emotion that was pouring out. I'm like, oh my God, this is like such a powerful thing. And from that point up, even from that point, before I'd even signed or even knew that Unleashed the Beast was on, I'm like, I've got to find out about this men's medicine stuff. I'm going to find out who this group is, because I just got drawn into, how powerful it was just to see men openly expressing emotion and feeling safe in that. And it's like deep down, there's something in me going, oh, that's just what I need. That's just what I want. And Jackie was the same as you. We signed Jackie back into Extreme after the ceremony, because I'm like, yeah, it feels like you need to come back. She's like, oh yeah, no, I definitely want to come back. So, so we flew back up. So I think we flew to Brisbane 3 weekends in a row, actually, to do, Bridge Extreme, and then I did Unleash. So let's talk a bit about where you're at now, because I know what you've really lent into, because I know we spent some time, catching up through, different workshops. I know that you held space for me at an Amend workshop, and, which was hugely powerful. And you've actually done it twice. So you are part of the support crew on an Amend men's workshop, which is there's one that was actually held back on the 19th of March, which was an awesome experience, which I was able to be a support crew on, which I was honored to be. But also then you've got your own program that I did, Fire and Ice, and I think it might have been Fire and Ice 2.0 or 1.0. I can't remember which one I actually
2.0.
2.0, yeah.
Yeah.
So, and again, that was just such an amazing experience. So can you talk through, now your programs, what you're running, why you're actually doing that, and some of the modalities that you're using to help support both men and women?
Yeah. So another thing I like to share with people was, like, obviously when I had my big shifting moment, moved into wanting to change and grow, then found my way into Amend and working alongside men. At some point it got to, I love doing this, but in terms of, it was very much trauma related work. And even though all the work that I do now, there's always going to be that element of trauma related, outcomes. I really wanted to step into the next phase of what happens for people after they move through their trauma, into more of that ascension work. Because going back to that inner child of mine who was always asking all the questions and the ins and outs of the universe, that's where I wanted to work from. So for me, it was, okay, when we kind of figure out a bit more around our past and our pain, where do we go next? We want to figure out who and what we are and what we're here to do, because that's so magical in itself. So with what I'm doing now, predominantly, so I'm a breathwork facilitator. I've done my training with my beautiful brother Dan from Spirit Breathwork, so have worked alongside him for a while now. Am a facilitator of his and have been running breathwork for some time. Very passionate about breathwork. I'm predominantly a sound healer, because sound is like my baby and my love, and it's always been there and always will be there. And some of the events I run, I love to couple breathwork and sound. Cacao ceremony, like I said, I was working with cacao for a while. Not so much anymore, but I still like to weave it into my events where I can. Meditation. I am using cold therapy, ice baths as well, as you'll see with Fire and Ice. I have ran plant medicine ceremonies in the past, psilocybin ceremonies, all sorts of different spaces. And I really love to sort of just go where the work is needed. A big part of what I love about who I am and what I am is I don't box myself in, I don't label myself. And again, it's not linear. My work is not linear. I go where I need to go and I shift where I need to shift, and I use the tools that I have to create environments and spaces for people for what they need. So I don't tell people this is what this is, and if it doesn't suit you, then it's not for you. Like, I will always be open to, like, okay, well, how can we accommodate? What is it you need? And try and shift it here for them. And at the end of the day, like, for instance, the word sound healer, it's just, I like to use it because it's, people know what a sound healer is, but I also don't like to use it. I know another couple of friends of mine who are sound healers agree that I don't really like to call myself a healer, because in the day, this is a self-navigated journey. We don't heal you, you heal yourself. And I really want that to be known for people, that my intention and purpose is to create an environment where you have an opportunity to heal yourself. That's the part here. Like, if we can, create safety and give permission and create an environment that you can self-navigate yourself, because self-navigation, like, healing through self-navigation is the most empowering process there is. Really is. Like, I don't want people to walk away thinking, oh, Jamie healed that for me, or I feel like I could only feel or be that because I was in the presence of that human. The idea is to teach you how to do it yourself, so that you eventually learn to just embody that into your everyday life. So events that I'm running at the moment, the ceremonial work has taken a bit of a backseat, to be honest, these days. And I really do pull more to the forefront. My breath and sound is the main modalities I use. And I'm running all sorts of events, lots of collaborations. I do lots of collaborations with sound, running just sound events. The reason for that is because sound healing is used in so many things at the moment, and it is a beautiful pairing tool to go with things. But I love to create events that are just about that modality. So doing some beautiful sound collaborations with some beautiful other sound healers, friends of mine. My signature event at the moment is Fire and Ice. So I'm about to run 4.0 in the end of this month. And this is a full, beautiful day, a full day of, using it's a bit of a tasting board, really, for all the things that I offer and that have been powerful for me. So I do include cacao ceremony. We do sound healing, breath work, ice bars, meditation. And this space started off as just a men's space. I ran the first 2 rounds just for men because obviously I've been in that space. I knew the power of it, and it was beautiful, and it was received so well because, again, we both know how amazing it is to share space with men, let alone journey with modalities like these together. It brings you even closer than just around having a chat, and then it came to me that as much as I love working with men as well, I mean, I have a massive feminine side to me as well. I have a beautiful balance of the two. And it's important that these men get to also be witnessed by the feminine as well, and vice versa, the feminine witnessed by the masculine, and to get this balancing act in there. So then I've opened it up now to having men and women at this event. So the last one I had women and men, this one the same as well. I will run another men's one as well. But at the moment, I'm loving this dance between men and women because this is the reality of the world we live in. So that's a little bit around what's happening at the moment. I did just run my first retreat recently in Tasmania with a very close brother of mine, Dan from Somatic Harmony, which was a big success as well. And that was a beautiful space to be into. Running retreats is definitely something that I'll be moving more and more into. So, and traveling overseas, taking this medicine overseas, because many people I've met overseas, it's just not available like it is in Australia. Really isn't. There's so many places. I just did a private breathwork and sound journey last week for a family, and they had a guest stay with them who was from Singapore. And he just said to me, that was the most amazing thing I've ever done. There is nothing like that over there. I can't find that over there. And it's a real dream and vision of mine to take this to places that just don't have access to it.
Yeah. No, that's beautiful. I having done Fire and Ice 2.0, and I think the key thing, on that, that there's a couple of things. One is, I'm an empowerment coach and I work with men, but I'm doing the work. All right. So if you're a man out there and you're looking for, you're going, hey, I really want to find someone I want to work with. I want to find a group or whatever else. The only thing I would say is find someone who's also not only guiding you on your journey, but is actually also doing the work and is evidenced in doing the work. Because I do see a number of, coaches who are out there, but they're actually not going the deep. They're asking you to go somewhere that maybe they're not willing to go. So ask them, what workshops are you attending? What experiences have you had? How often do you go and attend a men's workshop, a men's and women's workshop? Like, where are you leaning into those spaces? Because for me, it's important that whoever I'm working with, and that's why I love to, I will go and actually have Jamie hold space for me any day of the week. Why? Well, this conversation's been evident of it. He's not only providing the tools, but he's actually also out there actively doing the work himself. And so he's got lived experience, and lived experience then makes it a more enhanced experience when we're actually going through these processes. The other thing about sound healing, and correct me if I'm wrong, Jamie, and just to put it in, people go, yeah, I don't understand how sound heals. If you break it all the way down, is that we are all basically energetic and we're all vibrational. And so how our bodies work at the very, very detailed level, at the nanoparticle level, we are just effectively a whole lot of vibrating particles that actually convert to energy, that converts into how we're seen and how we operate. So sound, basically all the tools that Jamie will use, vibrate at different levels. Now you might go and say, cool, I didn't really connect with that sound bowl, but I really connected with the didgeridoo. Or I didn't connect with the sound bowl, but I did with the guitar. Or I didn't with the guitar, but I did, because the immersion he brings is actually all varying levels of vibration. And depends on which individual, where you're at in your journey, you'll actually align to a certain vibration that's happening out of that sound, and you'll actually feel it also in different parts of your body. Like you'll actually feel, you might actually feel certain sounds actually tingling in your legs versus up in your upper body versus up into your head, based on where those different vibrations work. So that's where it's really powerful, because there's an alignment between the vibration coming out from the sound, as well as if the physical sound, but there's a combination of that. You'll also feel where that sound's running within your body. Have I described that appropriately, or?
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, anyone who's been to my sound journeys or events will have heard me say this. I love to every time reiterate this for people so they get a bit of an understanding of my interpretation of sound and sound healing, is that, yeah, we are energetic beings. And I always like to be with, letting people that a beautiful reminder that sound is a human construct. I mean, it's frequency, vibration, taken through the eardrum to convert it to sound. So without human beings, sound actually wouldn't exist. But frequency and vibration will always be there, will always be a fundamental building block of the universe. So I always give that invitation to people, like, don't just hear with your ears, but you're here to feel the sound of the frequencies and the vibrations. That they permeate our body like an MRI. Like they're able to get into our very cells, and we have to really look at it on a quantum level, really, on the nano side of us. Like, we look at what we're made of. Like, we're made up mainly of water. If anyone doesn't know what the science of cymatics is, it's basically essentially seeing sounds. So if you look at like what bass frequencies do to water, how it pushes and pulls it, and you see like the geometric shapes it creates and what it does to it, or with sand, it's exactly the same thing with our bodies. We're made up of water, and what it does to us on a cellular level, it pushes and pulls us exactly the same way. And particular instruments, frequencies, and things like that will push us and pull us in different ways. And that is why people will, either lean towards a particular instrument and they'll lean out for others. It also kind of goes back to, like, we talk about music tastes, why some people like heavy metal music and some people can't stand it. It's just one of those things, like we all operate on different frequencies and vibrations. So what aligns for us is what's going to feel good for us. So essentially sound healing's, the work of trying to bring us back into alignment. How can we shift and pull the body on a cellular quantum level to help, heal us, nourish us, repair and restore us, increase creativity, help with, nervous system regulation, like the list goes on, and how powerful it is. And then when you pair it with something like breathwork, for instance, it's just goes hand in hand. Sound's a beautiful integration tool for anything, like anything at all, whether it's cacao ceremony, whether it's meditation, whether it's breathwork, whether it's cold therapy. I love to use sound because it's a beautiful driver to really embody and get home another journey that you've gone on. Yeah. So the way you described it, Steve, yeah, definitely, very much so. Yep.
Oh, the other aspect that was just coming into my mind about that, which is, for me, the key element is try to feel sound. And so the way I do it now is that, we can live in our minds. So for me, the more we live up in our minds, then we live in our brains, and therefore we live in a logical world and everything else, which means we're living in our ego space. The more disconnected we become, because we're actually sitting in one part of our, in our being. The more we can actually get down into our bodies and actually allow ourselves to drop down into our bodies, where, we are this water mass and everything else, which is where all the feelings emanate from and where all the true connection comes from. So if you think about when you're out in the sun, you can't hear the sun, but you can feel it. And whereabouts are you feeling it? And whereabouts are you feeling the warmth that's running through the different parts of your body? If you walk into a cold ocean, or you hop into the cold immersion into an ice bath, like you don't feel it in your brain, although your brain might freeze over. You're actually feeling it in different parts of your body. And so for me, the better way to become more and more connected with yourself and with the energy that's around you is to learn to get out of your mind and actually learn to use all the other senses that are there. So use the touch, use the feel, use the smell, use the taste, because what it does is that it permeates down through our somatic part of our bodies, and that's where all the receptors start to come in. So if you want to be just completely present, simple thing is just as soon as you walk out and feel that warmth of the sun, there's a good chance for that split second that you jumped out of your mind. You go, oh, how nice does that feel? And that's the space we want to keep trying to live into. Like when you see something,
I understand.
see for the beauty. Okay, go on.
Yeah, sorry. I remember, Dr. Joe Dispenza says like knowledge is for the mind and experience is for the body. And I couldn't agree more with him in that sense of like all of these modalities that I use, that's the whole intention of it, is to get out of the monkey mind, get out of the mind and get into the body, because we feel everything in the body first. Like, and you're right, like we just need to start dropping into that more. And that's really, really difficult. Even for me sometimes, like I'm a massive overthinker and I will just pull things apart forever in my head sometimes. And this is why this work's been so pivotal for me, is it's created a space for me to get out of that monkey mind and to drop into my body and to actually self-navigate where I'm feeling particular things in my body, and then get to pull apart what's happening there and why. So I do love sounds very good at that as well. And I often try and invite people as well in my sessions. Some of the sound healing I do is a little bit different to a lot of the normal, where I loop and create sound theater and soundscapes. And in the process of doing that, that can really create people to get very curious when they're laying there, their eyes closed, around what's going on up there. How is that sound being created? And I always have to remind them, please let your curiosity just go and don't worry about what I'm doing up there, and just allow this to come through your body. And if you do happen to drift off, just having no judgment around that and just coming back to it. So 100% agree with you. Like, it's about tapping into our bodies. Like, this is like one of the most powerful messages I can give people, is how to get more in touch with your body. This somatic work that so many of us are doing now is just life-changing.
Yeah, absolutely. The thing about it is that dis-ease, so we'll call it, everyone rolls into one big word called disease, but dis-ease always sits in the physical body. Always sits in the physical body. You don't have disease in your thought process. You don't have disease in your ego. It always sits in your body. And that's because that's where we store everything, is in different parts of our body, be it emotions and, be it toxicity and everything else. So the thing about these modalities is that they're actually tapping in at the cellular level to actually help release those areas of dis-ease. And the more that we try to shut off, the more disease we're going to get. The more we actually open up and allow it to be released again at that nanoparticle, the deepest level, then the more chance we're actually going to live a life with less disease, which we now know is, can be medicated and everything else, which we want to try and get away with. So, but that's, I think, is a topic that, Jamie and I could probably then spend another 2 hours yakking away on. But I just want to bring that into the fact that there's a difference between dis-ease and discomfort. And so when we're doing the somatic work and everything else, it may feel uncomfortable, But the good thing about it, it's actually also going to release yourself, and afterwards, the bliss and the sensation and the happiness can come from it is actually amazing when you walk away from one of these events, because you've had that body, had that chance to energetically release a whole lot of elements that probably at a point in time may have created you going from discomfort to disease or dis-ease. And we want to avoid the disease part of the world.
Yeah, 100%. Just basic things like, well, not basic, but like stress and anxiety. They're like two of the biggest major things that cause disease in our body. And they can actually be alleviated really easily by using some of the practices, by using our breath, by allowing sound to cleanse us. It's really such a better option to, again, the narrative and programming we're taught to just either push it down or go and self-medicate ourselves or numb out to it. So yeah, big invitation there for everyone out there listening to let your curiosity around coming and doing some of this somatic work to really come through.
Yeah, no, fully agree. So you've been hugely generous with your time today, Jamie, and I really appreciate that. We've probably gone a little bit longer than what we planned, so thank you for all that. The way I often finish off is if you could just, is there a way to roll this into, maybe a simple message, or a message that I know you're now working with men and women, but the podcast is mainly focused on men to start to learn to be more vulnerable and step into some of these spaces. Is there a message that, based on your journey and where you've come from, that you might put out there for men to think about?
Yeah. Actually, one comes to mind straight away for me, which was very big for me in my journey with working with men. And it is that, all of our stories matter. And I mean that in the sense of, I looked at a lot of the men that I sat in spaces with at the start, and some of the stories and the trauma that they had was very large and very horrific. And I compared myself that I didn't have stories like that in my life, therefore that I didn't have a place to speak. But I want people to also know from that position that doesn't matter about your experience and what's happened to you. What matters is the feeling. Someone who's had a very traumatizing experience, if your experience doesn't look like that, it can still feel the same in your body. And to just make sure that you are important and to voice what's coming through for you. Don't compare yourself to other people, for sure. And then secondly is, like I touched on during here, community. Find community, because it's so important. You're never going to get to where you need to be and allow that space to really open up and surrender to that emotional state if you don't find good people in your life, good men. So just reach out. Good men will always be there for you. And yeah, that's the biggest cornerstone of doing this work, I believe, is to find community. But yeah, thanks a lot for having me on here today, Steve. And like I said, I could chat forever with you about all the things. But yeah, it's been a real pleasure to be on here.
No, thanks, man. And again, appreciate the fact that, you've taken time to jump on. I've loved the friendship that we've created and that community that we've created. I think, off the back of Jamie's message, there's every single man who's been a guest on this podcast. If you're aligned with them, reach out to them. They will help you find community, or they'll become part of your community. There's not a man that I've known that I've interviewed that wouldn't welcome any other man in to say, yep, we have a community available for you. And it might be a small community or it might be a larger community. Otherwise, if you're looking for communities, I've got one, the Unearthed Man. There's the Amend community, which is a beautiful space. There's Men's Medicine. There's Heart-Led Warriors. There's a whole lot of these amazing men's communities that are out there that would welcome in any man at any point in time without judgment or anything else. And I think Jamie said it earlier on, which is going to the workshops and staying to do the work puts you on the start of the journey. Your ability to sustain and maintain and continue the growth through that journey comes from leaning into community and feeling the support and the love from a brotherhood who will actually keep holding you, holding the space, holding you there, but also holding you accountable. So, and if you fall off, they are there to support you, to help you get back on again, back on the horse and continue to move forward. So yeah, it's a super powerful message. Thanks for that, man.
Beautiful, brother.
All right, I'm going to let you go. Thanks a lot for jumping on. You have an awesome day today, my friend. And I'm definitely looking forward to catching up with you again pretty soon. Much love.
Beautiful, brother. Thanks a lot.
Cheers. Hey all, so what an amazing chat with Jamie, and yeah, I'm generally excited about doing that. And having been held by Jamie twice now in 2 different workshops, an Amend workshop and also in his Fire and Ice workshop, I could not recommend stepping into his space more. He's such a beautiful man, and the way he does hold the space, the way he actually just creates that safety, it's amazing. And you know, for me personally, as a coach of around men, I've taken a lot of inspiration from Jamie about how he works and how he goes about doing that. And so it's like anyone else, find someone who does it really, really well, lean into their spaces and learn from them, and then take that out. And that's exactly what I do. So awesome conversation. And again, I just want to thank him for sharing the journey, because, you know, he's opened up to about a lot of stuff in this conversation, which is really challenging to do. Yes, we're in the space, but still being able to talk about what took place in our past and that journey we've gone on, that still takes courage. Even though we may be getting more comfortable in having that conversation, it's still the courage of it. So I thank him for that courage. So I'm going to wrap up now. As you know, you can find me on LinkedIn, Instagram, or Facebook. Just search for me under Stephen Milverton, or you can search for The Unearthed Man. That's it for episode 63. Sending you much love and peace. Have a great day, Stephen.